I have a provocative quote to start with. This is from the CEO of Axios, which very recently, I think about a month ago, axed 50 jobs. And in the letter to all the employees, AI made an appearance saying, one of the reasons we are reducing the workforce is AI, among other things, consumption patterns, etc. But before that, he gave an interview to the New York Times in which he said, and I quote, AI will eviscerate the weak, the ordinary, and the unprepared in media. And I think, and that goes for any kind of technology. Not necessarily just AI, it's AI today. This moment in history, it is AI. It could have been calculators a while ago and computers at some point, right? And adapting to that change and adopting AI or whatever that technology may be into workflows will keep us from becoming redundant and also, compete and differentiate. So, and in the newsroom, in news organizations, I wouldn't say just newsroom, in news organizations, artificial intelligence, and for the purpose of this panel discussion, generative AI, to be specific, can be used for news. Could choose to use it for news gathering or not. Nikhil, you would agree. It's not something that Nikhil would want people to do. So news gathering, news production, news distribution. And so I want to start with you, Nandagopal. I'll come to Nandagopal, Deepak, Nisheeth, you, and because MediaNama has done something with, the explainers bit. I'll come to each of you. First, if you can give me, one place where you are using generative AI today in your newsrooms.
Okay, so at the Indian Express, I have a slightly contrarian view on how, where we should use it. I think like if newsrooms start looking at creating content using AI, then there is something really wrong, right? Yeah, but that doesn't mean we won't use AI. We are using AI, so we create a summary in a product. It's called Express Shots. Very simple product. But that's a summary that is created by AI but cleared by an editor.
This is a text shot.
It's a text shot.
How many words long is it?
It's a phone screen long. Right, so it's a very simple news and shots kind of product, very simple product. But the summary, the first draft of the summary is created by AI, and we still clear it. Now we have it across all languages, everything. So it's an in-house developed product. Now see and I'll take a minute to see. I think the biggest problem, I think most of the people who have run digital businesses might agree, is that let's say you create 100 stories a day. Only about 20 stories get read. That's the problem. And I think that's the problem we need to solve. How do we get the other 80 stories to be discovered, read by the right people? The answer to that problem is not to create more content. And that is how I think the AI problem is, as in AI is being rolled out into many newsrooms. I think the problem there, it's coming out as a business solution, not as an editorial solution.
Okay, so well put. You also have at MediaNama this sort of summary bit. So is that something you built in-house? Can you tell us what you do?
So one of the things that I've seen with media organizations using AI is that they're integrating chatbots into their news sites. And for us, the way we looked at it was, what are the problems that we can use AI to solve? And that is to give readers the reading experience that they want. So we might write articles that are, let's say, 2,000 words, sometimes 3,000 words, sometimes 400 words. Now, and yet what we've seen in a large part of the tech ecosystem is that people are turning to sites like InShots to read shorter versions. From our readers' perspective, they have a use case in terms of having explainers related to stuff that they do, because sometimes it's such a copy-paste an explainer and send it to someone, right? Or they used to create explainers for their own internal usage. So we've got 3 buttons so far below in any story. One is for an explainer, which means rewrite the article in Q&A format. The other is create a shorter version, which is we've kept it at 120 words. And the third is a slide deck, which is basically that if you've covered a regulation or a policy, can you convert that into for someone who wants to make a presentation on it, can they just copy paste this into separate slides and make the presentation? They know their stuff, but it just helps make their lives easier. And so we're looking at other similar products that we might look at, but also one idea that I have as a differentiated reading experience is, can I create a counterpoint part? So if there's a particular line of thinking that's in the article, can I show the other side of the story? And for generic newsrooms, if let's say they're perceived as being too left-leaning, can they also show the right side of the right-leaning side of the story, right? So there are ways to play with AI depending on what is the user need that you want to service, because at the end of the day, news is a form of service to our readers.
Got it. Deepak, when you look at using AI in the newsroom, what is that user need that you are trying to address at the Economic Times Digital?
Much like what Nandu talked about, for us, right now, AI sits in the CMS itself, but it's more a content synthesizer than a creator. For us, that's one stage that we've reached to understand to what degree will this synthesize our content. We use ChatGPT 4.0, which is a paid solution. Even with that, there are times we find something that goes wrong. So again, like he said, the AI bot will synthesize and give you a summary. The human being will have to check and only then approve. And we get 4 versions of that synthesis. But I'll give you also a funny example. We have an event tomorrow. Prime Minister is supposed to speak. We had a 400-word copy that he's going to come, he's going to speak. When we did a summary, the summary said he has already spoken. This is an article published on 23rd August, talking about 31st August. But ChatGPT 4.0 with OpenAI's abundant resources is still making it a has-been event. So that's one of the reasons why the human layer is still, at this stage, needed. Especially in the realm of news, you cannot afford to go wrong.
Absolutely.
Right? So you have to have the human layer. Does that mean you abandon it? I would say no. Consider AI very much part of your tool set. In the past, at least for financial journalists, Excel sheets, calculators, when they were invented, they were always part of your tool set. This is an added layer of tool set. Good, bad, ugly, to what degree of perfection, keep testing, trying, because it definitely will save your time. Today, at least I have the option of creating 4 summaries. And mind you, some of them have been equally beautiful. The way they've been able to crunch the 800 word into just 50 or 80 words for the summary. And I mean, so economists started something called executive briefing, right, for the busy CEO. For us, the synopsis is very much like that in ET. Plus, it feeds into Google, gives us some bit of SEO ranking. So as long as you have given the right prompt, it will do the good job. As of now, the current stage, give it the human layer, but work in progress.
Got it. Nisheeth, would you also say that synthesizing, summarizing, that's the kind of use that you have at the print?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everyone else who's spoken so far. First, just to set the table in terms of my perspective on the disruption, because you mentioned that, and innovation that it has brought about. I mean, there have been many, many disruptions like this in the field of media, starting with the Gutenberg press and then Telegraph, the Gutenberg press and then the Telegraph and the internet, TV, all of that, right? And these have been smartphones, major disruptions. Before the press was invented, it would take a monk a year to transcribe 1 copy of the Bible, right? And within the first year of the press coming into, I mean, more than 100 copies were printed. So that monk's job actually changed. I mean, they were no longer doing that, right? So in my opinion, I mean, in terms of the job, yes, there is a bit of a grim outlook, but I think there'll be more of a job morphing. I mean, jobs will morph. There'll be a metamorphosis, and of course, we all have to like learn to basically get with it, and then larger like job loss problems. But moving on to the use case scenarios, see, I agree with everyone here. Content creation is not what we should be looking at AI right now. At least right now, I'm talking about, when I talk about AI, I talk about generative AI, and I talk about the current perspective. 5 years later, 10 years later, as journalists, we all know things change overnight. But we are using a lot of it experimentally to look at social media trends. We're using this, we're still in talks with them, so I can't reveal who they are, but we're talking to them, and what the service that they provided to us is that, let's say, I give them a stack of the stories that I'll have in the next 2 hours, right? Or let's say 4 hours. And all of those go into the system, and then the system, according to platform, according to the time of the day, gives that story a score. Let's say you are 99 out of 100, and then the platform itself will then line up all those stories to go out on all these individual platforms, because the platform thinks that that is the best time and way for the story to go out.
So you have a news distribution integration.
It is a news
here,
distribution, and like I said, I mean, content creation, no, it's a no at this point from us, but distribution and production is transcription. I mean, if you've used Riverside FM.fm, they'll let you upload a clip, an audio clip or a video clip, and immediately you'll get the transcript, right? Traditionally, and I was just playing around with some editing recently. Traditionally, you would just go to the track and snip a certain part of the track, right? Now it gives you a transcript. So if you don't want a certain word, you just select that word and delete it, and it goes from the clip as well. So I mean, these are very highly intuitive distribution and production things that we could do, and we're of course we're using other platforms to track sources. So there's one platform that we're using where we fed all these links. So PIB, right? The Prime Minister's website, whenever he updates a blog. So the moment that page gets uploaded, we get a prompt, right? Similarly, there's another website where, I could go to an Indian Express, I can look for an Indian Express article, and then this platform will tell me what is the sort of engagement that the story has had across platforms. So yeah, I mean, at this point, it's a lot of it is about news distribution, understanding news patterns, and not so much about news creation. Yeah.
Got it. I want to come to you, Suparna. I mean, and I think the problem with a lot of us here when we're talking about newsrooms is we're thinking of a print or a digital text newsroom. We're not thinking of a TV or a, video first newsroom. And Suparna can help us with that. Can you tell us what Frammer does? And please explain to our audience why it is Frammer, and also why it is required.
Sure. So actually, I don't think that there is any newsroom now that does not have a video component. I think all of you will agree. These are largely organizations that started out as print, right, newspapers, and all of them have video now, right? So the first thing we're hearing is the importance of video as a ubiquitous form of news consumption, right? The second is every single person without exception spoke about summarization. And so what that establishes is the combination of the two. What is required now by the audience is short-form video, right? There is no arguing with the fact that we are operating in an attention economy where the average attention span is shrinking drastically every year. So I think the last count saw the Indian attention span at about 90 seconds, and that's dramatic, right? Yeah. So that's one thing. The second thing is that there was a report recently that said the maximum amount of computing power for AI will be used by the media sector over the next 10 to 15 years, right? So again, you cannot argue with the fact that the disruptive effect, of AI on the news industry is going to be massive. Does it have to be a destructive effect? Absolutely not. So I think what we're hearing from everybody, which is, really heartening, is that, and this is what we advocate for as well at Frammer, is to always have a human in the loop, right? So I don't think, well, can AI replace jobs at some point? It could. Should it? Absolutely not. But that lever is in our hands as the providers of news, right? That is our responsibility. And so the job really at hand is to see how AI can become a super smart assistant to a journalist, right? Whether it is to a producer, a reporter, an editor. To your point about what was said at Axios, will it force us to up our game as news providers? 100%. Because when you have it as a resource, as Nikhil said, for example, if you have an article where you suspect there may be a left-leaning bias, or there is a left perspective, why, when you have the ability to generate the opposite view, would you not use it? So in that way, it's absolutely can and should be used to improve our quality of journalism, right? Does it bring down the price point? Definitely, and I'll tell you how. So at Frammer, what we do, and we set it up a year ago, and I led NDTV for maybe 7 or 8 years as its CEO, so I had a considerable amount of video experience, right? And we knew where the world was headed, which was increasingly to shorter and shorter videos because you're competing at night with your Insta Reels, with, newspapers, but people are reading at night with Netflix, so you want things to be short and snappy. So what we do is we take any video and we make it completely digital ready. This is not just for broadcasters, but for anybody that publishes video at all. So for example, if Deepak does digital video for ET online, right, we could work with that. So what we do is we start out by transcribing the entire video. We then identify the key moments, so the most engaging moments of that video. We then package it separately for 8 or 9 social media platforms. So it would have different metadata, which for the uninitiated is headlines and descriptors, keywords, and so on, which are unique for Twitter versus for LinkedIn versus for YouTube. And then finally, we also take that video and we convert it from landscape mode into portrait mode, right? So now you're watching it in vertical format. And we're starting out with an interview which may be 30 minutes long, and we will end up with a 1-minute long YouTube short. Imagine the complexity involved in transforming that one long piece of content into something that is 1 minute long without losing accuracy or editorial integrity. Now, in a newsroom, at least the one that I worked in until a year ago, it would have taken a minimum of 8 or 9 people coming together from different departments to be able to provide a transcript. You would have a technical editor who would actually edit the video. An editorial person would decide on what parts to, upfront. Headlines would be given. A thumbnail designer would create the graphics, all that. All this is now being done by the platform. For a half-hour video, we take about 8 minutes to generate 25 short-form, ready-to-publish videos, right? You cannot compete with the scale and the efficiency of that. But what I do reiterate is that you have to have a pair of human eyes review it at every stage before you publish it. And so the ultimate gain to the user is one, efficiency, and secondly, I think you touched upon it in the beginning, which is what can we do really to make our content sing? And that means you have to have differentiated content. So if the PM is speaking somewhere, every news channel, every newspaper is going to cover it. If you have AI doing the hard work, right, and focusing on doing the heavy lifting, what your journalists can then actually focus on is differentiating that content in the time they spend on creating a good headline and what they pick up and how many stories they're able to generate from that. So that, to my mind, is the optimal use of AI in a newsroom.
Got it. A few things, from the first few minutes of this discussion is don't use it for content creation. All of them seem to use it for content summarization. And also, I think all 4 of you, and Suparna has built a product herself, is the integration of OpenAI, I'm guessing in most of your cases, is into your CMS and you've built solutions yourselves. So my question then is, to use AI, we have to also simplify these workflows. So right now, possibly in a small newsroom which is not building its own CMS, there's a lot of friction in using AI. I'm talking about the text-based, newsroom right now. Is if I have to summarize a story, I possibly have not paid for ChatGPT 4, so I'm taking the story, pasting it there, and then pasting the headline, and then writing this whole detailed prompt, and then saying, okay, give me this now. So there is a lot of time and friction in that process. So for scaling up and for more newsrooms to use generative AI solutions, are we looking at a CMS level integration? What are workflows going to look like? Deepak.
Look, it's already integrated in large CMSs, at least I can speak for myself. But I'd like to go back to what you said earlier. Don't use this for content creation. Let's not jump to that. Yeah. I would say we use for content creation only with the pair of human eye.
Right.
At least as of now, that's the confidence level that we have. And I'll tell you the reason for it. For large part of the time when maybe OpenAI was building it, it was borrowing heavily all the content without legal rights to it, and that's why the media companies are suing OpenAI unless they do a deal. For me, what OpenAI was doing, or when AI was being built, it was feeding off the content from the web universe. Good, bad, ugly, it did not have any differentiation. It took good content, it took bad content, mashed it up, and then you had a pav bhaji which had all parts of it. And that's where our belief and trust went down. It's only now that when it does a $100 million deal with New York Times, and if I get a certified, feed from OpenAI saying this content is exclusively all about US from New York Times, and then I'll have the confidence to say, okay, whatever it generates, maybe I will take a chance and automate some parts of it. So maybe it will take some time to reach there. I don't distrust it. At the moment, yes, it needs a pair of eyes. Okay. Coming back to your question of process
CMS.
workflows and all, human pair of eyes is one clear workflow. But I'll borrow from what she said. Look, the readership habit is also changing. A large part of our readership for the last 30, 40 years has been in the read bucket. Over the period of time and with the advent of internet and YouTube, huge amount is moving from read to watch. I can see that in a lot in the younger generation, in my own kids. There's a huge shift. When you want to now create so much of content for watch bucket, if AI and solutions like Frammer can do it in a couple of minutes, that's the best thing that can happen. There is also a slight shift of consumption of information from watch to listen. That's where the podcasts are coming in. That's also a place and an opportunity for AI to synthesize the same text content, which has been vetted, verified, produced by creditable organizations, and create solutions there. There's enough and more that can be done, should be done, hopefully will be done. And those old media organizations which have painstakingly produced that verified content will also make money on the side for it.
Nikhil, you wanted to say something.
Yeah, I think the critical part over here is having a human in the loop and verifying. I'm also not opposed to the idea of using AI to generate content, but the fact is that you still need to have a human in the loop, right? Because as journalists, our job is to trust but verify, right? And the other thing is that with AI, it's built to please you. It's not built to be accurate. And so effectively, if it doesn't have an answer to your question or an answer to your requirement, it will generate one even if it may be factually incorrect. So the most important role in a newsroom is going to be that of the sub-editor. They are the ones who are going to check for mistakes. Their jobs are going to increase because also as newsrooms start using AI more, their ability to create increases because of efficiencies that come in. So when you talk about identifying what to do in a workflow, my recommendation is always start with multiple small use cases, because it is in the small use cases that the propensity to make mistakes is less. But also, in case of, it's also a human tendency, right? The moment you give a large task to any chatbot, just as if you give it to any human being, it's likely that you're not going to be happy with the final outcome. So how do we work when we have a large task? We break it down into small steps, right? The same philosophy needs to be adopted when using AI, as in break things down into small steps, have checks and balances at every step of the way. What you'll see is that the productivity of the organization is going to increase drastically. And also that's where the job problems are going to come, right? So Jim Vanderhee's statement about it being catastrophic for media going forward is not unfounded. Not everyone will lose their jobs, but it's also that media organizations will become leaner, more efficient, and they will have to become more efficient in order to survive what's coming at us with AI in the future. And we can talk about that later, though.
Got it. Yes, Nandagopal.
Yeah, so I think in the newsroom, the base requirement now is that you have to be better than AI. right? So you can't be somebody who sleeps on the job and just lets the cursor move from, like if you're talking about a text edit, right? So, and the other thing, and I fully agree on this, is that, so about 2 years back when the Gen AI thing started exploding, we had a session, internal session with an external expert, who was from BBC. And he said, the more you use AI, the more sub-editors you need, right? And I fully agree on that because, internally we know that we have a great reporter, right? And you can actually sleep while editing his copy. And they also know that. But you cannot sleep while editing an AI copy. Because it can, even the simplest things, it can get it wrong and, it can hallucinate. It still does, and any given day, just check about yourself. Who are you with your name on ChatGPT? It'll get it wrong every single time. Like I have worked in ET, I have worked in all sorts of places where I've never worked, right? So it can never get it right all the time. So it's not a Six Sigma product yet. So you will still need more sub-editors. But the problem is the kind of companies that are scaling up on the AI use case are places where sub-editors have generally not had currency anyway. Right? So it's a it's a downward spiral.
I get it.
But Nandu, AI is also great at sub-editing. It's not perfect at it, but it's also great at sub-editing.
Yeah, sub-editing in the English sense, not in the Hindi sense. Sub-editing.
Do you have the screenshot I had sent you?
I do.
Possible to put it on the screen?
Screenshot. That
was the funniest example. To me, people who know good English and can speak well and write well, they actually have a great job in newsroom organizations if they know their language and grammar. This is not the screenshot. If you can switch to the Llama AI screenshot. Simple question I asked, and this is something I borrowed from someone's post on Facebook. I asked it, how many are in the strawberry word? It says some funny language first and then says answer is 2. Then I improvised. Let me just give it the better format of English. How many times does the letter R word appear in the word strawberry? Then it says, yes, it's 3, and it apologized.
But this was meta, by the way, but ChatGPT still doesn't seem to, this artifact is there in several other, I think, AI models.
Yeah.
I just
using AI for facts in the first place. The point is you do not use AI for facts. It's not meant to be factually accurate.
Yeah.
The problem is that perhaps we don't know how to use AI for our work, and rather than it having a problem.
I at this point, I just want to come in and say that
I've given the word strawberry with the correct spelling, but it can't decode that as well.
The fact that it has 3 and not 2 is a fact.
I feel that at this
Sorry,
point,
Nisheeth,
AI
yes.
is still hallucinating to a certain extent. It's shuttling between what's real and what's synthetic. It's still seeing pink elephants to a certain extent in some cases. You could say that it's a brilliant kid who can't be left unsupervised at this point, right? So that is, you will need human intervention for sure. And more importantly, what we must realize is, and Sundar Pichai, in fact, when he apologized for the big goof-up that happened with Gemini the first time, he said it, and I completely agree with it, we should not be over-applying AI, right? As important, and we were discussing this earlier, as important it is to know when to use AI, it is to know when you should not use AI, right? Not everyone. As a news manager, I may want a story written, let's say we're not talking about content creation, but just for the sake of this example, I may ask someone, a human journalist, to write a story in 30 minutes. And they turn it around. Then I say, okay, let AI write it, and then you intervene and look at it, review it, and then release it. AI takes, let's say, 10 minutes with all the right prompts and everything, and we all know that correct prompts is very important to write something. And then the person takes 15 minutes to fact check, review, and everything. So as a news manager, I have a story in 25 minutes, right? So it's quicker, five minutes quicker than the other one, so it helps speed. But then there's fact checking, there's researching, right? Then the fact that for those 15 minutes that the human resource saved, they can be much more creative than AI in generating something for us, right? So it's a quandary. I'm not saying that I have the answer to this, but I'm saying that we need to really think when we should be applying AI and when we should not be applying AI.
And the next question, both Nikhil and just now Nisheeth kind of touched upon it, is so that it's being used in newsrooms for editing, and that there has to be, and all of you have said this, there has to be this, human intervention for sure. But a lot of the application of AI is possibly in cases where there is a CMS, where there's a specific tool like Frammer that's being used, the the team head knows that there is, this being used. But there could be times when I'm sure there are entire teams, individuals who are applying ChatGPT or any other kind of generative AI solution to their stories to improve a headline, to rewrite the lead, and things like that. When such things happen, are there disclosures that are needed to the reader? Are there disclosures needed within the organization? What sort of guardrails do we have? What sort of guidelines do we then have when, and there's no shame in using ChatGPT to, write this better, right? Give me a better headline, something that'll get me those clicks, or use these keywords and write this headline. Sure, go ahead, use it. But then what disclosures do we make to the reader and to ourselves? If I can have whoever has some thoughts on this.
Can I just come in quickly on that? And I just wanted to say, one of our expectations seems to be, I find this bizarre that we expect 100% accuracy from basically like the internet, right? All your journalists use Twitter as a news source, use Wikipedia as a news source, and by that I'm saying as an input. As the news editor, you would obviously ask them to verify it, right, before you run with it. So it's bizarre to say that, AI is not 100% accurate. That's not its job. Or if we're making that its job, then we're putting ourselves out of jobs, right? The second thing is that less than accuracy, the main problem with AI right now is consistency. Right? So to get it to give you the same answer every time, that is what the real trick is right now. Right? Now, when it comes to newsrooms, most reporters are using GPT in any case, right? What is our responsibility to users is, of course, we should be disclosing that, this story was written by so-and-so with inputs from GPT or whatever. But I think what is frightening is that so many newsrooms in India still don't have an official AI policy. I don't know if all of you have policies that you communicated to your journalists, but there are no policies on that. There are no policies on when a disclaimer should be triggered, in my opinion, always, right? But we seem to be worrying too much about the other part of it and not really about this part of it, which is that it is already operating in our ecosystem. Last week, we were in a trial with an American network during the Democratic National Convention. So Frammer was used to shorten speeches by Joe Biden, by Kamala Harris, so on. So it was a very tense week for us because we couldn't get it wrong, right? And it was amazing to see the feedback from the network because they said what you said, which is that at that time when Frammer is doing the work of identifying or transcribing, identifying the key moments, our producers and our reporters could actually look at something else. So if you're not putting all this together in the form of a coherent policy, including which tools or platforms you're going to integrate, and by the way, integration now is ridiculously easy. It's not like, 3 years ago where you had to worry about 8 days of getting systems to talk to each other, right? We can integrate in half a day. So the fact that we don't have a coherent policy which is communicated either to our employees, to our teams, or to our audience. And I always say it's an audience now and not readers, because as you established, people watch us now, not just read us. That to me is the bigger gaping hole that needs to be addressed.
Got it. So I want to ask Nandagopal, Nikhil, Deepak, and Nisheeth, do you have an AI policy at work in your organizations? Yes or no?
So, yeah, we don't have an official policy, but we have put out notes that thou shalt not, right? But I fully agree with Suparna, because that's a problem, because I know across newsrooms, people who edit have noticed reporters who have become great writers overnight, right? And so even though we are we're telling people that don't use it. See, if they're using it to make their copy better, I think it's still okay. It's the sub-editor part that if it's coming with it, and then it has to be understood that you have read through it again, because even when it edits, it can introduce mistakes, right? It does introduce mistakes. So if that is happening and it's making life easy for the desk, right? Then I think it's okay. But even then, I think the reporter has to disclose to his boss that, hey, I'm using one level here. And so that's system, but I don't think that's happening. And again, I know I've met a lot of Scandinavian editors, for instance, who started using this because they use it at scale because of the costs involved and everything. They all wrote down the policy first, right? We are and especially in India, see, even the government is 2 years behind on all policies. So I think we will also be, in that late mover advantage place.
Nikhil, AI policy, yes or no?
So we have internal list of do's and don'ts. We have principles of AI usage, and we have a list of banned use cases that we don't allow usage for.
Okay.
And we went through an entire training workshop, which I then converted into a workshop that we do I've trained about 128 odd journalists so far in that, taking the same principles. But I've just been lazy about publishing an AI policy. I can put it together and put it out tomorrow, for example, because we already know what we've thought things through. And the one thing that I'm still a little unsure of is how do you, if, like Suparna said, add a disclosure, but then what do you add a disclosure for? If you're using AI for a headline? So the way one of the associations, I think it's a Norwegian one, in fact, they've said that if there is a significant journalistic impact of the usage of AI, is when you should disclose it. For us, if it's being used for sub-editing, which is most of our use case, or it's for identifying which more story ideas, I don't think that's really significant from a reader's perspective. So identifying a significant journalistic impact is what's going to be different for each organization. Everyone has to take their own call. Otherwise, you'll just be adding a disclosure at the end of every story. That doesn't really make any sense.
Okay. Deepak?
Look, right now, we don't have a policy because it's still work in progress. We're learning how to use AI to begin with. I don't think we should associate any shame with using AI. I've never said sorry for using Merriam-Webster or Collins Dictionary. That's where I learned my English from, right?
Absolutely.
So if today AI does become perfect solution for me, why should I be shameful for? Neither is government compliance forcing me to give a disclosure or a disclaimer for using it for synthesis or headline. For entire content creation, then too, policy doesn't today dictate anything. Even if there was a policy, and if I were to use my own knowledge bank, which is my own set of articles, to re-synthesize and give you something, then also, to me, so that's why disclosure, disclaimer, all of that, once the last word has been spoken on AI, then maybe policies will get framed. Right now, I don't think it's required. Everyone's still learning. It's just too new a baby to even, start formulating so many policies.
Got it. Nisheeth, you want? Yeah. Done.
So yeah, I mean, we don't have a formal policy, but we do have do's and don'ts. We have it for, in fact, people in-house, and we have it for people who are writing into us, who are basically external contributors, right? Because we've detected bits and pieces, basically, that have been problematic like that. So we have notified all of them that they can't, I mean, it has to be either declared or it won't go. So we've stopped pieces like that. What we do at the end of the day, I mean, readers, viewers, listeners, the foundational principle is basically intellectual honesty and public trust, right? So it is basically also, to a very large extent, making that distinction between intellectual honesty and dishonesty, right? We've sent a reporter to the ground. They've done amazing ground reporting, just really kicked the wheels on the story. We edited it well and packaged it brilliantly and everything, and we have a nice, fine 1,500-word piece for people to consume and a nice video. Now we have something original, right? We have something creative, and then we say, okay, fine, let me do a summary. I mean, how would you summarize this article for a 15-year-old, or for a 25-year-old, or for a 35-year-old? And that is something that we're also experimenting with. I mean, that distinction, right? I mean, it is something original and creative, and you're just basically just giving a sample or a capsule of that to someone, and of course with full disclaimers. We believe in full disclaimers. And going forward, labeling will be a huge thing, right? That is a discussion that needs to...
What do you mean by labeling?
Labeling wherever you've used AI, right? In what form, small or big. If you've just done your research, but you've written all of it yourself, what do you do then? So that is also a conscious discussion that needs to happen going forward.
Nikhil, you wanted to say something.
One last thing, we do have AI-generated outputs in terms of, the buttons that we've integrated, which is a wrapper on top of OpenAI that gives you a pop-up with a response, which is an AI version of the article. Whether it's Q&A or it's an explainer, etc. There we've got a very clear disclaimer that this is an AI-generated output. Please do your own fact-checking and due diligence, because legally safer for us to do that, number one. But also what we want people to become uncomfortable, for people to become comfortable with, is the fact that AI is unreliable to begin with, so lower your expectations. And that's true for newsrooms also. We need to lower our expectations and adapt to AI and adapt it to us.
Beautifully
One
put.
quick analogy. To me, AI.
I'm not I'm not stopping anybody. I know time's up, but it's a very interesting conversation. So please give us a few more minutes.
It's a touchy
Deepak,
topic.
last.
I'll just give you quick, to me at least, AI in the current stage, it's Wikipedia on steroids. Not everything can be trusted. Everything can be found at the click of a button. Use it at your own risk.
Great. So use it at your own risk, folks. A few things that we didn't get to discuss. Mostly hovered around the production bit, did not get to distribution at all. There are examples in India. HT, I think, has used generative AI to understand what story to serve next to its readers. There are examples of, the same kind of recommendation system that Netflix has. Other international publications have done this. There are also going to be implications on traffic that news publishers will have with the search integration, with AI. So there are all that conversations that we've not had today. Possibly it'll need a whole day session about just AI in the newsroom. But thank you so much, everybody. I have learnt a lot, and I'm sure the audience here has. Thanks a lot.